Okay. I want to respect your space. And so if it's possible, I would love to view day one, but I just wanted to honor that.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm
Okay.
happy with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Simbo and Bailey.
Amazing. So, okay, day two, as I mentioned, like we're it's 1 hour every day, 4 p.m. for us in the UK, and it's 11 Eastern for you, Colleen. Day two, welcome and overview, and I'm glad that you both are getting to know one another. So I was looking at Mind the Gap in London, and for me, it is Mind the AI Gap at the moment, because actually that's where we are. We're not kind of getting on board, then we are falling behind, and actually we will fall in the gap as opposed to kind of being ahead and really understanding where AI is. So me, Bally Binning, I'm all about kind of igniting change, realize the potential, shaping the future, and I really believe AI is helping us do that. Okay, so just in terms of what we did from day one, we did start with a recap, and we began with customizing the settings and configure our GPT. And so we've got these instructions which we will add for ourselves. So looking at our own bios. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. So Simbo, you may already have started with this, and you know, you might be saying, well, I'm not quite there yet, but and you know, remember, we can always come back and change this, and we can modify this. And I'll do this later on this week too, because I'm going to go in and change it. I did this some weeks ago. But it means because we can do it when we want to, you can add to it. And there are some shortcuts now, like programming terms that I've come across, which I'll share with you, which I feel like will amplify that whole kind of conversation in GPT. So, and yeah, so reflect on how they align with the specific tasks you've identified. So I know, Simbo, you talked a little bit about that. In terms of, Simbo, did you manage to do that?
Remember I said I had the free version,
Yes.
but then after the session, I went to look at it. So there is a customize within the free version, but you know, it didn't really appear like this. So I wanted to know whether it was, I know you did advise that we should get the paid version, which I haven't.
Okay.
But like I said, after the session, I checked the free version and it had the customize. So, but I'm not sure whether what yours has is more than what the free version has.
Yeah. And so I may touch on this in a moment. So with the difference between 3 and say 3 and 4.5 and in even the Turbo 4 now and minis, now that gives you more capabilities. Basically, it gives you it kind of understands the reasoning, like the thought process, like, but with 3, it still does quite a lot of the task. Like it still generates emails. It can still do a lot of stuff on the free version. That's why, like when I think of like Claude, like the other writing tool is I feel is also really, really powerful. And and I haven't subscribed to it, is Claude or Cloud AI, and it's so good for writing. Now, in terms of, you know, do we jump between different tools? You may want to use that for, say, writing, but you may have one where you keep your assistants in one environment, one space. But you could follow along and see. You could go in and you may still be able to customize it, but it may not allow you to create the assistants.
Okay.
So it may not.
That's the difference. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So it may not allow you to do that bit. So one of the things that came up was this monologue. It's a tag, which we put into the instructions. And this I copied and pasted. Hopefully, Colleen, you've got that. And what that does, it sort of said, before you respond, show me the thought processes or reasoning behind a response. In other words, I don't want you just to kind of give me information. I want you to tell me how you're coming up with this and the reasons that sit behind that in producing that. So I'm getting its understanding rather than it just kind of giving me stuff. So it's really kind of, it can become quite conversational, which I found this to be really powerful. And I know this came up yesterday, Simbo, is one of the questions, why sort of, and that shows up in the chat as well. So, okay. So, Colleen, what we will have at the end of these 4 days, you'll have obviously access to, you know, I want to make sure you have access to your AI tool, which it seems both of you have. Colleen and I, before you came in, Simba, we were talking about whether Colleen had used ChatGPT. And yes, so you both used it, which is fantastic. The other thing is, have I customized my settings? So that's going to be, we want to be able to check this off at the end of this week. I know the instructions to build my own AI assistant. In other words, when you know what we're going to cover, you go away with being able to create one assistant, not just one, but many assistants. You'll be able to have one at the end of this week, but you will be able to do it in for other capacities. So we'll come on to this a little bit more today. You want to be able to test your AI assistant, the one you've created this week. So once you've done that, you can share it, and what we'll do, we'll assess it against the criteria which I've created. And so it will give us kind of information on how it performs your GPT, because it's all very well having one, but how well does it perform in terms of like its outputs? And so we want to be able to test it. I've received feedback and I'm clear on my next steps, because the thing with this is it's all very well having something, but what am I going to do afterwards?
I was right. Dad did want to give me the hotel.
Okay,
But,
so
he didn't change.
oh, might be, is that okay? It might be Colleen. Colleen, is that little one I can hear?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was unmuted. It's definitely a movie for my little one.
Okay. Okay. So why did we customize our chat GPT yesterday? Because I also I want to know why I'm doing stuff, right? So when I started doing this, I'm like, okay, why am I doing this? I also really need to know. So because I want it to, because it needs to kind of fit my specific needs. It's like we talked about these generic needs. It doesn't serve anyone, right? I want it to understand me as a coach and those I serve. I want it to communicate directly. I don't need it to give me vague info. You know, kind of, I don't need all that. I just need it to be very succinct and to the point. Prioritize, focus on what matters most. That's key. And speak the language, speaks my language and understands my goals. It has that personal touch. It's also time saving. I jumped one, which helps me kind of streamline for efficiency and enhances productivity. So it helps me make decisions, and we'll touch on that a little bit today as well. So this is kind of why we're doing that, these initial steps. And it's not anything. And I don't know anyone that has actually customized their GPTs. I'll tell you the truth. At the moment, no one's done it. So, okay. So the objective today is to gain insights into AI trends. So I want make it clear where the trends are going. So there's a little bit of research to begin with, so that we have an understanding of where things are in this space, and understand how to refine our GPT settings, specifically for automating routine leadership tasks. Now, I'll put leadership as in like people I serve, but both of you are leaders in your capacity. So if we're leading and we're mastering this, we know that we can put some of these tasks and we can automate them, and learn to apply our customizations to handle key functions like content creation, communication, and data analysis. And I'll go into a little bit more on this today as well. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing. And I'll carry on, and you can say if there are any questions that come up. So where are the trends then? Insights from 2024, and I've got the references as well, so I'll share those in the slides later on. The latest AI index report says advanced AI models like ChatGPT or Gemini we talked about yesterday, and Claude as well as the other writing tool. Like I said, there's so many out there, the top like Microsoft Pilot. these are so advanced. The capabilities are huge and they're vast. I mean, that's kind of the amazing thing that's coming out of it. It would be you know, a bit weird not to mention there is concern. People are kind of questioning AI and its impact on society. There's a lot of conversations about that as well. Well, is it going to take jobs? You know, somebody said to me the other day that they're based in Brazil, in fact, their family are, and they said that there's a lot of people using 11 labs. So if you've heard of 11 labs, is where you're able to people are able to kind of get the voice of the grandparents, and then the parents are ringing. It sounds like it's the parents' voice. So there are things that are going on that people are using AI in a way that's unethical, and they're using it to manipulate people, or perhaps even pretend to be, you know. So we're seeing some of that. There is a little bit of like, oh, what does that mean? Now, I also have a mindset of an AI, so I wanted to share this because I also know that knowing that, it means that it doesn't mean that we're going to stop kind of understanding the concerns. Of course, there are going to be concerns around something new that comes out, but whose hands is it falling into? So educators like yourself, amazing. You're kind of at the kind of forefront of what's going on at the moment, because we're getting those questions are coming up. Global leadership, the US lead in AI model production. That's kind of, we're seeing that. China leads in its AI patents, interestingly enough, from the report, which is really kind of like remarkable that it's kind of there in terms of patent there. AI investment trends. Although yesterday we talked about kind of where AI is, there's a decline in investment overall, but there's definitely a lot of increase, if you like, in the generative AI. And generative AI is what we're talking about here with GPT, or we're looking at Claude, or we're looking at Gemini, Dally for creating images, that type of thing. And so you have that in the paid version. You have Dally, which is the image creator as well. So although we're seeing we're getting a bit of reduction in funds there, but we're getting an increase in generative AI. So the thing that people talk about is what we call generative AI, where we're able to create images, where that was a generative AI example, or we're able to create music, video, voice recognition, and also text. The LLMs are the large language models, which means we've got the text generated. And so where the challenges lie, how do we start regulating these? So there's need for standardized approaches when we're thinking about AI use. And so this is kind of like taken off hugely, but people have stayed a little bit behind the curve in knowing how to regulate. There were certain enforcements in certain countries, you're not allowed to use it, and then people use it, right? They can go bypass that. So there's much more need, I feel, but I needed to bring this up anyway, because that's kind of what's happening, and it's also really helpful to kind of see what those conversations are like. So generative AI is kind of the pre-trained GPTs. That's where its name came from, the pre-trained transformer. So when we're thinking of creating our own GPTs, that's basically creating our own assistants. We're training it like an intern would. And so GPTs can automate tasks for generating content, managing communication, providing data and data insights, as we saw earlier. Why is it important we kind of start using them? Because it gives us time to do other things like plan, strategic plan, and make decisions. And so we can automate the stuff that that takes up a lot of time. So automation examples I mentioned yesterday, I began talking about this, Simba, when I was saying, when we're thinking about our system, what is it that's going to help you to automate? Like, what is it that we can start thinking about? Or we might start thinking about newsletters, maybe a blog post, any type of writing, news articles, routine email responses, handle standard inquiries and confirmations, or data summary and report generation. So yes, it summarizes. Now, with summaries, I found we do have to know how to, with all of this, we need to know how to prompt it, but that kind of comes later on. But at least we know. Yes, Simbo, please, yeah, feel free to ask.
Apologies. Part
Good.
of,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Coming from the sector where I come from, the education sector, some of what you have listed here, like drafting newsletters or blog posts, might be some instructions given to students for assignments or assessments. And so, and things are very unclear at the moment on how do we need to reference AI? What do we do? I wonder what your take is on this. And of course, I know, you know, if I go onto a ChatGPT and I draft newsletter, I will make it my own. I would, you know, do my due diligence and fine tune and so on. But looking at it from maybe students' perspectives where they don't even know what they're doing might be right or wrong, and the ethical use of AI. I wonder what your take is on this.
So it's a fantastic question, because I've been looking into other tools now that we're getting detector AI tools out. And they're the kind of ones that might look at, has this been generated by an AI tool? And it's probably unlikely that they're going to know if it has been created by an AI tool, because there may be, it's slightly different to other kind of modes like Turnitin, where they, you know, pick up on scholarly papers, and students may be using that and getting credit for something that they didn't do. Now, what I would do for anything like this, and if they're using it, is I would actually get them to do the thing where we talk about the reasoning and the process and the planning. So even if they're using it, say, to create a newsletter, what is the intention behind that writing? So that it means that assessments become more robust. And so they're not simply lifting it, because you know how it is, as soon as we start penalizing people for doing something, they will go and do it anyway, right? Or they'll find other ways of doing that. But I would then get them to, because tell you the truth, it might produce a newsletter, but it's going to be very generic. The ones that are going to be able to do it really well are the ones that have crafted the prompting skills, like learning how to prompt really well, like, because it's like, it's a bit like when you're cooking a dish. It's like you throw everything in the pot and you hope for the best. And what comes out of it is not the best thing, because it just kind of produces something that's really like tasteless, sloppy. And so it's going to have a lot of like, it's not going to have the flavoring, or it's not going to have like they've missed the steps. So I would say, if they're doing something like that, I would get them to go through the steps on how they're creating it. Like, what's the first thing they're going to be doing? What's the next thing? Because if they are just assigned with any task like producing a report, they may just give you an example of like 400 words of a report, which makes no sense at all. I'd like, okay, what is in that section? What's the purpose of this, and really break it down. So for assessors, it's going to become a thing where that's going to be a little bit more that's needed. I hope that, and does that answer your question, Simbo? Or is it that you're saying if they just simply lift it?
Yeah, no. I think it's like you said, probably working more with the process of how they get to, you know, what they're doing, rather than just generate. I suppose it's working hand in hand with them to see that they're doing it ethically. I think maybe that's
Yeah. The
Yeah.
biggest
But thank you.
yeah, the biggest learning with any of this is more the process and the thinking that goes behind it is the power of generative AI. And so this is where the prompting gets really, I mean, that's where it takes it to the next level, because we're really kind of honing in on what those steps are. And more we understand those, more we're able to do that and become, if you know, become like more critical thinkers and you know what we want people to do. So yeah, brilliant.
As an educator, I was thinking too that when you were talking about the process, but when they go to present, when you understand something and it's embedded in your learning and you're starting to use the action steps, like it's like presenting it, you know, if it's foreign and you've had chat GPT create it, and it's not really embedded knowledge where you will understand the process, the intent. And so I'm an art teacher and I'm thinking more creative, and it's like the delivery system, like presenting it or creating a mini workshop, or I'm just trying to think creatively as to how they have to truly, like you said, understand the process, the reasoning, the planning, the intention, but then almost the delivery is what's coming up for me, or the action where you can really understand if it's embedded, that they learned, they made growth. And I'm just curious, as far as teaching, I'm wondering if there's going to be a way to get into some education with understanding how they're going to wrap that in. But yes, I was just thinking of the next phase. Sorry, I'm just adding that. It's just a thought.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's such a gap here where because of policymakers and things take so long, and also assessments, they take so long to kind of go through that process that it's going to be slow. So the more we understand it, this is where the power is going to be, because they'll say they haven't or they've not used it. Because if we go into a lot of the Microsoft tools now, it will say, do you want it AI generated? And they'll click on that, and say inadvertently I clicked on that, and that's what it produced, and come out with that. So more understanding is still needed in that area. So yeah, it brings up a lot of discussion for certainly for like speaking about it, like delivery, getting them to talk through that process. So this came about, and what, like, so it becomes a real discursive conversation amongst sort of like learners to learn that these are the steps I took and the reasoning behind those steps. And that's kind of really powerful, I feel. So yeah, so those could be some of the automated tasks there. So thinking about automation process, say for yourselves, which are the things that if you were to hand it, to hand over, and I know, Colleen, I've spoken about this, right? If you were to give it to someone else, what would be that thing that you would hand over to someone else? And is that the thing that we can get Chat GPT to do for us so that we can then spend time on other things like strategic planning, decision making, that we can spend energy? At the end of the day, that's, our time is really valuable. So some of those routine tasks that you would want, and I'd love for you to share that, because what we're going to start doing is thinking about how we can then create a knowledge base based on what you already have to create the thing that we can evoke in the GPT conversation later on. So what would that be? These are just some examples, by the way. It might be emails, it might be meeting agendas, it might be social media posts, it might be creating images. Colleen, perhaps, because we're going to see more of that as well. Bimbo, what's your take on that? So I'll.
Yeah, I'm looking at the creating social media posts only because I'm very bad at it. But if I were to use it on a day-to-day, I would like to see how, because I manage a lot of activities run by some of our student workers, and how it could help with coordinating some of these activities for me.
Yeah. Okay. So the coordinate, and when you say coordinating, are there steps in that process? Have you got have you got steps that they need to take?
Yeah, there might be steps, but there might also be maybe using AI to you know, show some ideas of what else I'm not seeing at the moment that could support the process or expedite the process.
Okay. Yeah. Brilliant. And we can definitely do that with this tool, because that's where some of the things, this is where I've really like the different perspectives, the different angles that we don't see, GPT does see, which is like, oh wow, like I hadn't thought of that. So that's where it becomes really powerful in that sense. Okay. Colleen, what about yourself? Are there things that you wanting to have it do for you that it will, save time for you? And
Yeah, I think a lot of the writing, the routine emails and automating those, social media posts, I'd like to maybe eh, improve it with creativity, but I haven't gone down the route of AI generated images. But I think coaching tasks in general, I think it would be really amazing if it could help me free up the time to do the one-on-one coaching, but generating content, generating um, like a freebie, like kind of prompting things that support entry into coaching.
fantastic. Yeah. So what we could do then, the first thing I would say is once we've done that, so I'll show you what, and I showed Simbo a little bit of this as well. So it's time to kind of think about our assistant, right? So I'm going to stop the share now, and I'm going to go into what we're going to be doing next, which is tomorrow we're going to be putting in and creating our assistant. I'll give you a few examples because Colleen, what you gave me was quite a few different tasks in that, right? So, but it's okay because we can sort of like say, what's the one thing that we want it to do? So, when I did this a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the challenge, I had people saying, well, I don't really know what my voice is. I don't really know how I show up. And I said, well, do you have examples of your written work? They're like, yeah, of course I do. Okay, so how do we feed the model to kind of understand my written content? So you will have already created these like steps or even like emails you've created. Like for example, with Simbo, you may have text that you're giving so that like the team can have that, so they're coordinating other people. You can dive into those. They're going to be resources, right, that you've got. So normally we have these in a file, and we've got them in a file, we've got them on a drive or somewhere where they go in and access it. We're asking them to read that information. But we don't need to ask them to read that information, because one thing I do know from education is not everybody reads this stuff, right? Because it's just like, so we want to be able to do is for them to pick out maybe even like some information that's related to the question that they have, possibly. That could be one. Or get them to think outside the box. Like, I hadn't thought about that. So that could be one way you could use it. So I can show you what we'll be doing tomorrow so that you can start thinking about the one, because I always say start with the one, and then you can build on this later on. Like we'll have quite a few of this. Like I was working and I was thinking, well, what do I need automated? I was like, yeah, I need everything automated. If I could I suppose a lot of this stuff, I would just give it to people to do. But I just need to then hone in and say, what's the one thing that I can really start thinking about? So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to share. So I'll share what let me see if this is, that's not the one. So I'm just going to come out of this moment just to make sure I've got the GPT up. There's so much you can do. I'm always amazed like how much you can do with this. This is like, it's blown my mind since I have been watching it, and I will share my screen. Let's see what's going on. Okay. Okay. So, and you can have, once you've got this tab, so you can actually have two of them open in one go. The GPTs in two tabs as well, and I can show you that as well at some point. Let me, which I find really powerful, because if I'm using one, then I can jump into the other. Like I can have two tabs on. That was what was happening a minute ago. But okay, so I like so Colleen, you might even recognize some of the if you're able to see. So you've got sort of my GPTs, which you can go into. These are my GPTs, and I started my first one. I've got quite a few now, but first one was, the purpose of this was to create a Bally assistant, right? And so what that does, it brings up the assistant in this environment. So I've made it private, and how I did that was I just put, do I want it, when I actually created it and configured it, I just made it privately available for myself. And so I can copy that link and I can share it with you. I can actually share that with you in a moment, and you can have a look to see what it's got in that. And you will open it in this space, right? So I've got the personal account with this model, and I'm not an affiliate, by the way. I just love this tool, and also I love Claude, but I love this because I can then later on, there's something else that you can do, is link it to your websites, and that's a next step up, which we won't do in these next few days, because you can actually link it with APIs. But for the purpose of now, so if I went into this, if I were to edit my GPT, I'm not necessarily going to want to edit it, but I'll copy this in there. So what I had to do was I had to, welcome back, okay. I would go to the bit where you configure. I'll go through these steps tomorrow. And I'm going to add some more information in here. I gave it a name. I've kept it very minimal. The other ones are really detailed instructions. So I've then said what its name is. I've said what its assistant, like this AI assistant contains all the information about my brand and my business, or so that every time I evoke it in conversation, it understands that that's kind of where they go. Now, what I've then said, you are Bally. They're not really, but you're kind of like a helper AI assistant and writer. You use only the information in the local knowledge. And I'll say what I did then was upload the files, knowledge base. So to answer the question. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to refine this even more by tomorrow. And I'm going to say explicitly only pick the information here in this knowledge base. So don't scrape the internet for anything. And if you can't find it there, let me know. And that's kind of how detailed I can be, because what it will do is it will pick information from kind of this latent space, because it's predicting what the next thing ought to be. And then it tries to fill the gap there. And that doesn't help, because then that's not related to my brand. So I really want to be explicit in where it goes and how it responds. And I want it to kind of use the style of the Bally Biz brand voice, right? So what I then started doing is, how do I know what my brand voice is? You know, if you most likely have this information, I just got it to create this and look at information I've, like, basically the stuff that I've already created. I got GPT to rewrite that for me, some of it, not all of it, but some of it. So I had these PDF documents, and I can have up to about 20 files in this. So it uses this data. It doesn't go anywhere else until I ask it to. And I can do conversation starters like let's go, or you know, let's get writing, or whatever it is. I could click on web browsing, DALL-E, and so if I want to put any other capabilities, I don't need to do that now, because I just want to stay in this environment. I don't want it to connect to any website at the moment. It's okay for this, for what I'm doing at the moment. So so you may have some of this, say, for example, Simbo, you know, for your role, if we're creating and we're giving it a name, so like by tomorrow, if I say, what would be your assistant doing? And what would you like your assistant to be, like writing? So we give it some blur here. So what would be that knowledge file? You may not have all this information, and so in the challenge, but ideally, if you have like a few, we can start testing these and seeing if they work and do the thing on the tin, basically what you created. So once we configure, so we'd go in here, configure this here, create, because we would be able to do this. And it shows that it's live there as well. I can make it publicly available, but I choose not to because I just want it for myself. That's just one example of what I've done. And these were the 3 files that I uploaded on here. You can actually upload files directly into the instructions. You don't have to put them in there. But if you've got a lot of files that you've got a lot of knowledge base, you can upload those in there, because that's where the power is, because it doesn't have to, you don't have to go into these separate files to do that. So, and that's kind of where it would be. And then every time you have a conversation, so if I just kind of came out of that, and if I was to say, so if I was to test it, so you will be doing this as well. And if I was just, let me see if I can move this out of the way here. So I can say, for example, who are you? So for example, who are you? Right. And it will just kind of say, hopefully. So it's picked up quite a lot in terms of what I'm about. So if I asked it to write a post, or I can kind of like instruct it depending on what those instructions are. So it's already picked up my core values, because those core values aligned in also the way our behavior, because it's almost got a memory. Our model has a memory of how we show up. So it kind of starts to understand me. Think of me as the partner on your leadership journey, helping you break through barriers, reach your full potential, and shape the future you desire. So it kind of talks back to me like having my own intern, without having to kind of always think about what thing to create or what to do. I've also used other writing styles. For example, I've actually gone and I did something else as well. So I'm just gonna, let me see if I can go back into this. I use something, let's see if I can, I use something called, you may have heard of a Dean Jackson. Don't know if you've heard of Dean Jackson, right? So I wanted to know about the 9-word email mastery writer. So I wanted to know how he was writing his emails and what made him this, like why were people opening his email? So I kind of like started learning about this, and then decided, okay, so I want to learn rather than having to kind of like want to learn what he's doing and use his style. I'm not copying him, but I'm actually using his way of writing, which then means that there's a 9-word email mastery writer that I can then, if I choose to use it. But I was intrigued to hear he's done so well in this kind of mastery, what's made it special, and how can I then start learning? So we can use it as a learning tool as well. Like, how can I master my own email writing skills, right? Not played around too much with this one. I have created other ones as well. You might recognize, like the Core 4 one with the kind of what we've been learning, and so forth. So that's kind of what I've been doing with it, but I want to hear what you're going to want to do with yours, so we can start putting those instructions tomorrow into your assistant, and then we can start testing it out in a way that kind of serves you. So I've actually copied the GPT in the chat, and you can see how that works, and you can sort of like start testing out, like, okay, what's he doing? You could just ask questions and seeing how it works, and it will open in your GPT environment. Like I said, like I use it as a space in this capacity as well. The biz assistants really powerful, because I know both Simba, I know you're working with students. but I also know you want to be doing social media posts, so that might be something helpful when you're doing yours there as well. So just as a recap, there's a lot of information, I accept that. And I'm going to stop. So I'll just kind of pause and say, do you have questions before we kind of close for today? Colleen, how did you find it today?
I'm excited to go in and I think I've been using the free one without even being signed in. So I'm excited to go in and purchase the paid one and explore your Bally Biz assistant. I might piggyback on what Simbo's doing because if I want to do so many things, but if we're doing the same kind of thing, both doing social media, I assume, then maybe we can align in the course and get a little bit further tomorrow in that assistant. But I'm very excited to just crack into this doorway of support and just looking at yours, it looks so exciting. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. So social media. So we kind of look at that as in moving forward in the next couple of days, how we can make social media posts easy and have what we can do in creating assistants that create social media posts, because they can take up a lot of time if we're thinking of ideas. And before we go, just a quick kind of question about social media posts. What type of posts are you putting out? So I can ask both of you so that we can kind of start with that tomorrow. So shall we, Simbo? Simbo, what are you doing? What are you putting out?
Yeah, well, Colin, I'm not very good with social media, but I was thinking more Instagram related. So, so I think that's where I would like, where my interests currently lie. Wanting to know more about that and how I can, generate posts along those lines. But I don't know about Colin, and you might be more advanced than I am at the moment.
To be honest, I've been a bit resistant to social media. I think I'm home on childcare leave with 2 young babies, and you find yourself at the very beginning with having this time wasting it. And so I've really kind of turned off social media in the last little bit and gone towards growth and learning. And so now I have to turn it back on to build a brand and build a business. And I'm to be honest, resistant to it. I need to build inspiring content and I need to connect with potential clients, and I know it's going to be serving me. But it is just something I know I'm not thrilled to be spending a lot of time on social media. So the thought that it could generate and I could approve and could kind of build out in support of my brand sounds fantastic, because I don't want to spend a large portion of my day on there. So
Yeah, and that's the power in what you're able to do with this, is to save that time, because it's easy to go in and sort of looking at any post, the hours that could be spent, and then suddenly you've gone off and you've gone into this like hours pass, right? So okay, so the task then, given we're going to be looking at social media, let's go into kind of what that brand identity is for you. Because if we're creating social media, what that looks like, then we can align the assistant with your brand identity. And then that will help us think about how we produce the content, basically. So the little bit of thinking behind that, and I can touch on brand identity a little bit tomorrow, so we can like hone in on the language that's conveyed, because it's the output is the thing, is the social media, but we still want to have our voice that's unique and the people that we're serving, so that that people start knowing it's Simbo, Colleen, who's writing this information. Or if you're not still sure, pick someone that you're following yourself that resonates, then we can start like looking at that to see how they've done it. Like that might be one example, because I also think there's like people that have done it really well. So yeah, starting point is my first thing I would always say in creating an assistant is let's get our brand voice, and then anything that builds from that will just grow, because we've kind of got that kind of like foundational of like who am I in this world, and what do I how do I want to represent myself in any scope, whichever kind of platform I choose, whether it's Insta or TikTok or whatever those social media platforms would be. Okay, fantastic. Well, we've come past the hour, and I just want to say thank you, Simbo. Thank you, Colleen. I hope you found it helpful, and it's great. And I will see you tomorrow, same time.
Thank you. Just one more thing, Bally, I'm sorry. Because I'm in training at the moment, so I might just come in a bit late like I did today. So
Yeah. Okay,
giving
not a
you.
problem. Not a problem.
It was nice to meet you, Simbo. And
And
thank
nice
you,
to meet
Bailey.
you as well, Colleen. All right. Thank
Um,
you. See you tomorrow then.
See you
Bye-bye.
then.
See you tomorrow. Bailey, do you mind sending me the recording so I can catch up from day one before tomorrow so I don't
Sure.
feel
Absolutely.
dragged?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so very
All
much.
right.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye now. Bye.